Have you ever heard the phrase, appearances can be deceiving? Well, one waitress learned this the hard way. It all started in a fine dining restaurant, where an unexpected guest arrived quietly. He seemed like just an ordinary man, simple clothes, a laid-back attitude. But what no one knew was that this man was none other than Shaquille O'Neal, one of basketball's greatest icons and a co-owner of the restaurant. What unfolded next was a shocking reality check, filled with lessons on prejudice, respect, and plenty of surprises. You'll be moved and inspired by how a simple dinner turned into a confrontation of values and attitudes. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss incredible stories like this. Now let's get to the details. One seemingly ordinary evening, Shaquille O'Neal decided to step into a luxurious restaurant in the heart of the city. Unlike what many would expect from a basketball legend, he was dressed casually, a simple hoodie, a flat-brimmed cap, and sporty sneakers. To anyone glancing at him, he looked like just another tall guy looking for a meal, nothing more. But for Shaq, this was more than just dinner. It was a way to test something that had always intrigued him, how people treat those who don't seem to fit in. The restaurant's ambiance was impeccable, almost intimidating. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft reflections on tables draped with white linen. A delicate aroma of spices and fresh herbs filled the air, accompanied by the faint sound of cutlery mingling with hushed, elegant conversations. Shaq, with his imposing presence, seemed to stand out against this carefully curated scene. Nevertheless, he approached the reception desk with ease, a slight smile on his face. Soon, the eyes of a few customers began to land on him, curious and perhaps wary. Could he be lost? Seemed to be the silent question floating in the air. Yet Shaq was unfazed. He introduced himself to the host, who hesitated briefly before offering a polite greeting. The evening had only just begun, and the gentle giant had no idea what awaited him next. What stood out immediately was the reaction from the staff. While some exchanged quick, discreet glances, one waitress in particular seemed to scrutinize Shaq with greater intensity. It was as though she had already formed an opinion before he'd said more than a few words. Shaq noticed, but with the patience that defined his character, he chose not to react. He simply waited, curious to see how he would be treated. And so, with calm composure and a hint of mystery, Shaq was led to a table. Yet something in the waitress's demeanor hinted that this would not be the peaceful evening he had planned. As he settled in, he had no idea that this dinner would turn into an experience far beyond what he imagined. Emma, a waitress known for her strict demeanor and air of superiority, approached the table where Shaq had been seated. Her eyes quickly scanned him, evaluating every detail: the casual clothes, the cap, the relaxed posture. In Emma's mind, this man didn't seem like someone who belonged in such a high-end restaurant. With a wry smile, she placed the menu on the table and asked, almost theatrically, "You do realize this is a fine dining establishment, right?" The question carried a tone of doubt, almost as if she were testing Shaq. He, however, remained calm. He picked up the menu with a gentle smile and replied, "Yes, I do. Thank you." But Emma's expression made it clear she wasn't convinced. As he flipped through the options, she lingered by the table, seemingly waiting to see if he would actually order something or back out after seeing the prices. "May I suggest something?" Emma said, leaning slightly forward. "Perhaps a more affordable dish. We have some simpler starters." The comment, though disguised as kindness, was dripping with condescension. It was clear Emma was judging Shaq based on his appearance, without the faintest idea of who he truly was. Shaq looked up from the menu and locked eyes with her. There was no anger in his gaze, just a serene composure that stood in stark contrast to her attitude. "Thank you for the suggestion, but I'm interested in the main courses," he said. Emma frowned slightly, almost incredulous. It was hard for her to believe that this man was willing, or even able, to pay for the expensive dishes that symbolized sophistication. As Emma walked away, her glance met those of other staff members observing from a distance. Some seemed to share her doubt, while others simply chose not to get involved. But Emma's discomfort was evident, and she appeared determined to prove her initial assessment right. Little did she know that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her career. Shaquille O'Neal sat calmly, as if Emma's remarks had no impact on him whatsoever. The menu lay open on the table, but his focus was on something far more profound than the meal options. Shaq possessed a rare ability, the capacity to look beyond words and actions, understanding that people often act impulsively for reasons they themselves may not comprehend. He knew Emma's arrogance said more about her than about him. As Emma walked briskly back to the counter, her hurried steps betrayed her discomfort. Shaq, on the other hand, took a deep breath and decided not to let the situation ruin his evening. Over the years, he had learned that reacting impulsively only fuels negativity. Instead, he chose to respond with dignity. His posture was steady, free from hostility, a testament to his inner strength. While waiting for Emma to return, Shaq surveyed the restaurant. He took in the intricate details of the setting and the interactions around him. He knew that in time, the truth about who he was would surface, and it would spark a revelation no one in that room could have anticipated. Patience, he thought, is one of the greatest virtues a person can have. Emma returned with a neutral expression, trying to conceal her lingering skepticism. "Have you decided what to order?" she asked, almost as if challenging him. Shaq smiled and pointed to one of the most expensive items on the menu. "I'd like this one, please, and also the chef's recommended starter," he said. Emma raised her eyebrows, but jotted down the order without argument, her disbelief still evident in her expression. Shaq knew he was being underestimated, but instead of letting irritation take hold, he saw it as an opportunity. There was a greater lesson at play, and he was determined to unveil it at the right moment. As he waited for his meal, he mentally prepared for whatever came next. After all, Shaquille O'Neal was not just a basketball legend, he was a man who knew how to turn adversity into a moment of growth and wisdom. Emma seemed determined to maintain control of the situation. Despite taking Shaq's order, she deliberately seated him at a table near the kitchen entrance, where the clatter of pots and pans and the constant movement of staff could easily disrupt his meal. It was clear she believed she was subtly humiliating the customer, reinforcing her assumption that he didn't belong there. Shaq, however, stayed composed, settling into the seat with a calm smile, as if nothing had happened. As he waited for his starter, Emma returned to the table, this time carrying a special menu. It featured the most expensive and exclusive dishes the restaurant had to offer. "Perhaps you'd like to reconsider your order and try something truly unique," she suggested, her tone teetering on sarcasm. To the other diners, it might have seemed like she was being helpful, but Shaq saw through her intentions. Without missing a beat, Shaq glanced at the menu and did something unexpected. He pointed to one of the priciest items, a dish renowned for its rare and sophisticated ingredients. "That looks perfect. Please add that as well," he said calmly, handing the menu back. Emma, visibly unsettled, hesitated for a moment before jotting down the additional order. It was as though she couldn't believe he was genuinely willing to spend that much. The other staff members began to take notice of the scene. Some whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of what was happening. Shaq's serene demeanor and quiet confidence starkly contrasted with Emma's growing unease. Determined to prove her assumptions correct, she pressed on, her discomfort evident despite her attempts to mask it. Meanwhile, Shaq took the moment to observe the restaurant and its patrons. He could feel the subtle shifts in energy as the interactions unfolded. He knew that Emma's actions weren't just being noticed by him, but by everyone around. By remaining composed and saying little, he was steering the evening toward a climax no one could ignore. As Shaq patiently waited for his meal, the restaurant manager, a seasoned professional with a keen eye for detail, walked into the main dining area. He was making his usual rounds, ensuring everything was running smoothly, when his gaze landed on the imposing figure seated in the far corner. For a moment he froze, disbelief flashing across his face. "It can't be," he muttered under his breath as a smile began to form. The manager approached Shaq quickly but cautiously, as though needing to confirm his suspicions. When he finally reached the table, his voice was filled with astonishment. "Mr. O'Neal, what an honor to have you with us tonight." He extended a hand, clearly excited. Shaq returned the handshake with his signature warmth, while the manager continued, "If I had known you were coming, we would have prepared something extra special." Emma, who had been watching from a distance, froze in place. The color drained from her face as she tried to process what she'd just heard. "Mr. O'Neal?" The name echoed in her mind, bringing with it a flood of realizations. He wasn't just any customer. He was Shaquille O'Neal, a basketball legend and, as the manager soon revealed, a co-owner of the very restaurant where she worked. Wasting no time, the manager addressed the staff loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Team, let's show Mr. O'Neal the hospitality he deserves. He's one of us." The revelation sparked murmurs of admiration and surprise among the employees and guests. Emma, however, remained rooted to the spot, unable to meet Shaq's or the manager's eyes. Her usual confidence had been replaced by an overwhelming sense of embarrassment. Shaq, ever composed, smiled and deflected the attention with humility. "I'm here like any other guest, just to enjoy a good meal," he said simply. But the atmosphere had already shifted dramatically. What began as a quiet dinner cloaked in subtle judgment had become a moment of profound revelation that no one in the room would soon forget. With everyone's attention fixed on him, Shaq rose from his seat. His already commanding presence seemed to magnify in that moment. Politely, he asked the manager to gather the staff, stating that he had something important to share. The dining area, which had been filled with quiet chatter and the clinking of silverware, fell silent. It was as if every person in the restaurant instinctively knew they were about to witness something profound. Shaq began to speak in a calm yet authoritative tone. "Tonight, something caught my attention, and I believe it's a lesson we can all learn from." His eyes swept across the room, making contact with every face. In this world, it's easy to judge people based on appearances. Sometimes we do it without even realizing it, but that doesn't make it any less harmful. His voice carried a weight that seemed to touch every corner of the room. Emma, standing among her co-workers, couldn't lift her gaze. Her hands trembled slightly as she absorbed his words. But Shaq wasn't there to humiliate her. Instead, he was using the situation as a teaching moment. "Respect and equality aren't just fancy words," he continued. "They're values we should live by every day, with every person we encounter, because you never know who's in front of you or what they've been through to get where they are." Each sentence seemed to resonate deeply with the audience. Shaq shared some of his own experiences of being underestimated and how they shaped his outlook on life. "I've learned that true success isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat others, because in the end, that's what really matters." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and a few diners discreetly wiped away tears. When he finished, Shaq paused, allowing his words to linger in the air. "I hope we can all leave here tonight with a new perspective, a little more mindful of how our actions impact others." He thanked the manager and the staff, then returned to his seat as the room erupted in applause. It was clear that his message had left an indelible mark, but the ripple effects of that evening were only beginning to unfold. The impact of Shaq's words reverberated throughout the restaurant like a transformative echo. The diners, who had previously been absorbed in their own conversations and meals, now exchanged glances of understanding, many visibly reflecting on their own actions. The staff in particular appeared deeply moved. The manager, always attuned to the restaurant's reputation, seized the moment to reinforce Shaq's message. "What happened tonight is a reminder that everyone deserves respect, no matter who They are or where they come from, he said. Emma, meanwhile, was visibly shaken. As she cleaned a nearby table, her hands trembled slightly. She knew she had made a mistake, and now her actions had become the centerpiece of a public lesson. But instead of feeling only shame, she began to think about how she could change. Perhaps this experience, which started as an episode of arrogance, could mark the beginning of her personal transformation. Shaq, as always, handled the situation with grace. He wasn't seeking revenge or to humiliate anyone, but rather to seize the opportunity to instill a lesson. Before leaving, he asked to speak with Emma directly. "Thank you for serving me tonight," he said with a kind smile. "I hope you see this as a chance to grow, because that's what life is all about." His words, simple yet profound, stayed with her. The restaurant, once merely a sophisticated space for fine dining, had transformed into a stage for a profound lesson in humanity. Those who came simply for a meal left with something far more valuable, a reminder that transcended the physical space and touched their lives. Some diners even commented among themselves, "He's not just a basketball legend, he's a legend as a person." As Shaq exited the restaurant and got into his car, he exuded the calm of someone who knew he had made a difference. He didn't need applause or recognition. What mattered to him was knowing he had touched hearts and perhaps sparked change. For those who witnessed the evening unfold, what began as a simple dinner became an unforgettable lesson about prejudice, humility, and the power of respect. And so, what started as a simple meal turned into a powerful life lesson. Shaquille O'Neal didn't need harsh words or drastic actions to prove that respect is the foundation of any relationship. He chose the path of humility, showing that true strength lies in how we treat others, regardless of their appearance or status. And you? How many times have you judged someone based on first impressions? This story challenges us to reflect on our biases and the importance of practicing empathy every day. After all, the impact we leave on others can be far greater than we realize. If you believe stories like this have the power to inspire change, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to know, what would you have done in Shaq's place? And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, so you never miss inspiring stories like this one.